Welcome back to my channel, artists. Today we will be drawing one-point perspective architecture. Step number 1 is an optional step to draw a circle. If you choose not to do that, you can begin with step 2 to add a vanishing point somewhere in the middle of your page. Then from that vanishing point, draw a line out to the edge of your circle. I actually end up drawing, I think, 7 lines. Anywhere between 6 to 9 is probably a good number. Go ahead and draw either to the edge of your page or the edge of your circle if you drew one. Now you are ready for step 3, draw the tops to the buildings. So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to draw a straight line across the top for each building. Some of them are going to be a little shorter and some a little taller. Make sure your lines look like they're straight across for the top and make sure they are not too much different height for your buildings. Then of course in the middle you're going to want to erase those lines. That middle part is your sky, so erase all the lines that are at the top so it just looks like all of your buildings are connected. Step number 4, connect your details to the vanishing point. This is a tricky one. So for the first building, I want to start a little easy and I'm just going to draw these lines that go from the bottom to the, from the top of my building all the way to the bottom, but I'm connecting my ruler to the vanishing point. So notice as I go from line to line, my ruler slides with the top of it connected to the vanishing point. Once I finish the side line to the windows, I'm going to draw the tall sideways lines that go actually across. Notice as I'm getting closer and closer to the bottom of the page, my lines are getting further and further apart. The next building that I'm going to draw is a little bit different. I'm going to go ahead and draw starting with the sideways line. So again, closer together at the top and a little further apart as I slide down. I'm going to have just a few lines less than I did on my last one. Then I'm going to draw, this one's a little tricky, so I'm going to draw a part of a line that goes and connects to each of those sideways lines. Notice how I'm not going all the way up to the top like I did for the last one. I'm kind of like leaving a gap. I'm doing 2 at a time next to each other, and then I'm going to slide it sideways and do 2 at a time next to each other again. When I am finished with this, I am going to go ahead and connect these 2 lines with this like curved line you see to make what looks like an arched window. If you're at home working on this, you might think about pausing the video in between each of these buildings and trying each of them with us one at a time. For the last building, I'm going to have windows that are not connected at all. And so for that, I'm going to, again, line it up to the vanishing point and draw like dashed lines as I go down, sliding it, making sure I'm still connected to the vanishing point, and try to make lines that are mostly connected, mostly in line with one another, those dashed lines as they go down. These are going to be 2 sets of windows that are actually 3 sets of windows that are just next to each other with some brick or some space in between, like you might see at our school or on a house. Once I've done that, I can draw the sideways lines. If your buildings are not perfect, like if your lines are not perfect to make perfect windows, this is the time to fix it. So if you'll notice some of my windows don't quite connect all the way or their line was a little too long, that is the time that you can actually take an eraser and erase it. If your lines don't connect at all, you can take a pencil and kind of fix it. You'll see I do that on the window on the left here, kind of making it a little longer to make it connect. And then drawing the very last bit of those top and bottom lines to my window. Voila, it looks like it's really out there in 3D space. For the next set of buildings, I'm going to try to make it match some famous or historic buildings. In the classroom, we are talking about art from France or Paris, so I decided to print out some pictures of buildings from Paris. You can see that I'm going to start here with the Louvre. The Louvre is kind of a funny one. It's a little harder to make it go to the vanishing point. If you are in the classroom, you may not want to start with this one. Like I said, it's kind of tricky because most of those lines are not actually supposed to go to the vanishing point like some of the other ones will. But you'll just look at the building and think, how can I make this fit that space for my building the very best that I can? So for the Louvre, it's that pyramid kind of glass building right outside of this art museum. And I'm going to just draw the lines the very best that it looks like from the picture and continue on. Go ahead and fill up all of the buildings whatever way you'd like. You can invent your own buildings. You can draw famous buildings. You can just kind of repeat some of the different kinds of buildings. Whatever you like, whatever looks interesting to you. Fill up your buildings the very best you can. Like I said, focusing on connecting to the vanishing point whenever possible. that I have finished all of my buildings, I am ready for step number 5, to trace with a Sharpie. When you take your Sharpie, try to trace the basic shapes. That means like the outside line of the building, lines for doors, lines for windows. If you have a lot of really delicate details in yours, for example, my Louvre building that we just saw me make, some of those lines are just too small and too close together to trace with a Sharpie, so leave those for now, and just focus on those most important lines, tracing everything with a Sharpie. If you've drawn your building in a circle, you'll want to trace the bottom of the building line. As long as it's still part of the building, you'll want to trace that bottom part, making sure that all of those buildings are outlined with a Sharpie. That helps the perspective look really nice and also cleans up any kind of mistake lines that you might have made. When you have finished outlining your buildings, you're ready for step 6, to add Sharpie details. This is where I go back on the Louvre and draw those windows that were just too small to draw with a regular Sharpie, but you can also draw other detail lines. For example, later on, I just draw some kind of funky lines on top of my Eiffel Tower just to make it look like more of the texture of the Eiffel Tower building. I draw vines across one of the buildings to make it look a little old and kind of like it fits in with some of those ancient buildings. Some of my buildings look like they had sculptures on them, so I drew some like squiggly lines to make it look like some sculpture parts. Whatever looks fun and interesting to you, make sure you're drawing neatly. Of course, we don't want to mess this up by being sloppy, but if you have some fun ideas to add a little more fun and pizzazz to your buildings, this is the time to do it with that ultra skinny Sharpie. Another good idea at this time would be to take an eraser and erase any pencil lines. I had a lot of lines on my Louvre building in pencil that I didn't quite get correct, so this is a great time to use your eraser and erase all of your extra mistakes. Keep on adding fun little details to your project. Like you can see, I'm going to add some little ornamental designs to the Arc de Triomphe, or your little sculpture wiggly lines, whatever looks interesting. Like I said, interesting to you, as long as it's drawn neatly, it will look really, really awesome. We are ready for the last step of this project, to add some pencil shading. When you think about pencil shading this project, I want you to think about what we know from science, that light travels in straight lines. So if a light travels in straight lines, the objects closest to the light are going to be lighter, and the objects furthest away are going to be darker. Also, anything that is not pointed upwards, for example, the bottom of this arch here, would not get any light, so it's going to be very, very dark. In those dark areas, I want you to, like the bottom of your picture should be dark, it's furthest from the sun. I want you to pencil shade some dark, and then just as softly as you can, and then smoothly blend it up with your finger all the way towards the top. So the top should be soft and light, and the bottom should be darker. It doesn't have to be extremely dark. You already have that black Sharpie to show some dark values, so you can just have like a soft or medium light value blended up. When you start to do this to more than one of your building, it starts to feel much more realistic. If you want your windows, for example, to be a different value, like you can see that I'm doing here, pencil shade around them if you can, and if you can't, you can actually take an eraser and erase any part of the smudging. Erases really, really easily. So if you have any parts that like got the wrong smudged value, you can erase them. Sometimes having one clean line from a lighter color to a medium color, because it's a different texture or a different value, can add a lot of interest and a lot of like neatness to your feeling to your picture. Keep going, go throughout your entire project, thinking of dark at the bottom and softly blending to light as you get towards the top. I hope you have enjoyed making pencil shaded artworks with us today. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel to keep up to date on all the fun and fantastic things that we are doing in the art classroom. What will you create?